Yeah, I think that goes back to the power of the mountains. They're beautiful, powerful places, but also if you put yourself out of your comfort zone and you move past that and you're successful, that's so empowering. And then you take that back to your job or your daily life, whatever it is. You start to understand what you can do, what you can accomplish, and then maybe you go home and you run a marathon or an ultra marathon or something like that. It's so eye-opening, and you wouldn't learn about yourself in the same way if you didn't have these experiences. And I think that's why it's so powerful to set these big goals and accomplish them, to face your fears and push yourself outside of your comfort zone is so important for people. And it's such a human thing to do. You're a better person for it.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the beautiful soul, Mike Hamill. Mike is the director and lead guide of Climbing the Seven Summits. Mike is a 6 times Everest Summiteer, world-class mountain guide, having guided over 120 major international high-altitude climbing expeditions, has climbed all of the 7 summits, the tallest mountains on each continent at least 6 times, some as many as 25 times, and so much more. He is the founder and president of the Tiger of the Snows Fund, which is a not-for-profit that provides grants to further education of mountain tourism workers and their families. He is also an active marathoner, ultramarathoner, ironman, skier, cyclist, climber, traveler, and fly fisherman. What I personally love about this conversation is Mike's clear passion for the self-exploratory journey, not only in the mountains, but in life. This drive for living life out of the comfort zone, to get out there and truly experience the majestic offerings, to live and to learn. He genuinely cares about the client's journey to success, has a strong sense of contribution, and places deep value on the importance of cultural relationships. Now, as a side note here, myself and a few other lovely ladies are booked to trek Everest Base Camp with Mike's Climbing 7 Summits in April 2022. Now, the world is full of surprises and uncertainty, and I'm not sure, pending pandemic, whether this will be possible. It may be rescheduled for April 2023. We shall see. But I did want to share that I am mindset coaching these lovely ladies in preparation and during the trek. And if any one of you is interested in trekking Everest Base Camp and mindset coaching, or either or, certainly reach out and connect. Welcome to the To Be Human podcast, Mike Hamill.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, I want to start with sharing part of your mission statement for your business, Climbing the 7 Summits. I came across this personally a few months ago when I was looking on your website to see if there was any form of expedition that I could go on. And it really sort of resonated with me and touched my heart. And it says, "We believe in the transformative power of the mountains to turn ordinary people into extraordinary achievers." And I think this is just such a beautiful mission statement and obviously a reflection of your own experience. I'd love for you to talk to me about the transformative power of the mountains in your own life.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, the mountains have changed my life. I found mountain climbing and it was like, I fell in love. And since that time, I've dedicated my life to being in the mountains, whether it's as a guide or a company owner. And the mountains are just incredibly powerful. They've changed my life, but they really change everyone's lives that are part of the mountains. It's just such a powerful medium, and I think. I always say my job is easy. I organize some logistics, right? And I let the mountains do the rest. I take people to these beautiful places, facilitate them achieving these huge goals, these lifetime goals. And it's so powerful that, they come back having had these incredible experiences. They never forget them. And it's a lot easier to kind of go back into the drudgery of, 8 hours a day behind a computer or something like that. If you have those experiences in your life and those experiences to look forward to. And it's just such a powerful medium. So it's an easy job that I have. And the fact that I get to facilitate that and take people out there and show them these incredible places. I mean, they truly are, from Antarctica to Mount Everest to, Irian Jaya, Karsten's Pyramid, to experience these different cultures, Russia, Europe, wherever it may be. It's been a huge education for me traveling to all these places, but, still to this day, I've done 200 international expeditions over the past 25 years. And when I summit a peak, even though it might be a peak that I've summited 20 times in the past, it's so powerful for me, and it keeps me coming back, and it keeps others coming back. I'm just so lucky to have found my passion and to be able to share that with other people. So it's been an amazing ride.
And you shared that you've done over 200 international expeditions, which you say very casually, and it's just such an amazing achievement. And I really, really honor you for that. I would love to sort of take us back to sort of when you got into climbing. Is there a moment that you remember when you got into mountain climbing where it really resonated with you, and it kind of fueled the fire within you to recognize that, hey, this is going to be much more than something I do casually, but this is going to be something that I essentially dedicate my life to?
Yeah. I think, a couple different points here. I grew up in a town, happened to be a university town, the University Dartmouth College. They had a really strong climbing mountaineering club. And I remember that the students would come into our high school and give these slideshows of these just incredible expeditions that these, 18 to 20-year-olds were going on to Peru or Nepal. And that was just so eye-opening for me. I literally, I'm from a small town in New Hampshire and a small state in the Northeast in the United States. And I had never really traveled beyond the East Coast. I had never traveled internationally. I didn't really realize this bigger world was out there. And I got a glimpse of that through these slideshows. And I thought, well, if these kids can use climbing as a medium to see the world, to see these incredible places, then maybe I can do that as well. And, there were some other local climbers there that went to climb Mount Everest and made a little video of it. And I just thought that was so cool that, some small town climbers can be on the big stage and travel the world and see these places. So that was really eye-opening for me. And I think that's what encouraged me to start traveling the world a little bit. I actually got down here to Australia to train for Nordic skiing when I was in high school. And then I biked across the United States with my sister just to see the West Coast, because I'd never been to the West Coast of the United States before. So I was really a kind of a small town guy. And it was just so eye-opening for me. And then the next step beyond that is, traveling, climbing internationally. And I just fell in love with it. And I never really stopped. But in terms of, was there one moment where I thought, I'm going to make this a career and do it for the rest of my life? No, I don't think there was. After university, I applied for a job on Mount Rainier in the United States, and I was lucky enough to get the job. And I thought it was just, a way to kill time before going back to school and getting a real
job, right?
Yeah. And so I did that for a few years, and then I got opportunities to guide internationally. And then all of a sudden I'm guiding in the Himalayas, and I'm stepping up to Everest. And it was never really a conscious decision to make it a career. I just kind of fell into it, but I loved it. I was doing it because it was my passion. So I didn't want to leave it. I didn't want to, go back to school and, try and make something else work because that's what I was supposed to do. I wanted to follow my passion. Luckily, I've been able to make that work. So.
And what do you speak about loving it and passion, like how does that show up for you in the mountains?
Yeah, I think I've always been a very outdoorsy person, whether it's, training for Nordic skiing when I was younger. I was just always outside as a kid. I was never one to be on the computer or playing games or anything like that. So it's just a part of who I am. It's kind of how I feel most alive and free is being outside. So it was kind of a natural transition for me. But, I think one of the biggest things for me is, as I mentioned before, being able to share this with clients, share these experiences, but also learning from my clients, like, hopefully they learn from my experience in these peaks and I can pass that on to them. But everyone has a story, right? You have a story. Our clients have a story, whether they're a pipe fitter from Philadelphia or, the first seven summiter from wherever, Croatia. Everyone has a different story. And that's one of the things that I've loved most about my career in the mountains is it's such an international thing. I get to experience this with people from all different walks of life. And I get to see their experience and hear their experience as well and learn about their lives and their countries and, how they view life as well. So that's been as much of a passion for me as kind of the education of the world, these places, these different people, the local cultures that we work with. The Sherpa, I spend as much time with the Sherpa as I do some of my family members. So, they're like family to me, and it's just been an amazing learning experience. So yeah, for it to be my passion and to be able to share that with other people is just so cool. So
I think that is so cool. And I find it extremely fascinating. And obviously this podcast is called To Be Human. I'm really curious, like obviously spending so much time with people from all walks of life, out in beautiful nature. Is there any like common themes you've found between people from different countries, like sort of coming together that reflect just our humanity and the commonality between us?
yeah, I think the people that tend to go on these trips, they're very kind of open-minded and kind of like me. They want to learn from other people. They want to go to these exotic places to learn from the local cultures. They want to learn from other people on the trip. So very open-minded people. And it's kind of this, I consider it a little utopian society where we bring people together from all over the world, all different walks of life, and share those experiences. But definitely, the people we get on these trips are very type A, goal-oriented people. And, they've been successful in life, and they're often successful in the mountains as well. So, that rubs off on you as well. And I've learned a lot about, success, how to create success, by kind of looking at these people's lives and how they've approached their work in mountains as well. So everyone has a slightly different approach, but there's a lot that I could learn. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the type A personalities, because I can only imagine, you are obviously a leader. You've guided over, I think, 120 international climbing expeditions.
Yeah.
So you're leading people that are essentially, I'm assume many of them are CEOs or, executives in big companies.
Yeah.
Talk to me about leadership mindset, because I know that you've shared with me before a book that you really resonated with was called Endurance, and it's about Ernest Shackleton's voyage. What are some of the lessons that you apply in your own leadership?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, always in the mountains is, and I know it was a theme in endurance as well, is just leading by example. You can't tell people to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. So whether it's setting up a tent or building snow block walls to make sure you're safe at Denali High Camp from an impending storm, you need to lead by example, and people follow that lead. They're going to be, much better team members if they see you diving in there as well. If I just sit back and, drink a coffee and tell people to build a snow wall, it's not going to work. So I think that's really important. But, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of type A successful people on these expeditions, CEOs and, leaders in the industry. So, I think that has forced me to be much more detail oriented. I want to make sure that I'm on top of all the details and everything, so that I can convey that well to these people who are obviously curious and expect that higher level of attention. So it's kind of kept me honest as well, the quality of clientele that we have. So it's been a give and take relationship, and I think it's I've benefited from it so much. So,
And in terms of mindset, what would you say has been or is sort of one of the best mindsets behind a successful expedition for clients, and maybe a mindset that is sort of limiting in how people approach their expeditions?
Yeah, there are a couple of different themes that stand out. One is being a team player. On a lot of these peaks, you can't do it on your own. You're tied on a rope to other people, and you're dependent on other people for your success. So you have to be a team player. You have to help people out. If you're the first one ready in the morning, maybe you help down the people that take a little bit longer, to help them take down their tent or put their pack on, and just kind of have more of a team mentality. Helping out the guides as well is super important. But yeah, I think things like that go a long way in the mountains. So,
And I know that, obviously having experienced so many expeditions, there's going to be moments throughout these times that are challenging. And I know in your own personal life, you were both like a witness and a rescuer in the Manaslu avalanche. And then in 2014 and 15 on Everest Base Camp, there was avalanches and earthquakes and all sorts of things. I actually had Alyssa Azar on the podcast, who had also been there in that time. Yeah. Sort of having been there and experiencing that, because I know, even in my own life, there are people that are interested, even, for example, if they're not climbers, interested in doing something like an Everest Base Camp trek, but there is fear of, potential dangers. How do you sort of help with that form of mindset? Because for me, in my own life, like, there is an excitement to that element of, that's part of the beauty of being in nature, is the unknown, is that the uncertainty of it. How do you help clients that may really want to do something but are sort of held back by that fear?
Yeah, I think, it's very true. I think a lot of people are attracted to mountain climbing because of that inherent danger. And we do, that's part of the guiding industry, is to be able to mitigate those dangers as best we can. But I remember my first time rocking up to 8,000 meter peak Choyu, I felt a bit overwhelmed and intimidated. And one thing that I always try to convey to my clients is that if you do the work, if you go 0 to 60 and you climb Kosciuszko and then you think you're ready for Everest, you're going to be intimidated. Right. And, you're not going to feel comfortable on Everest. So if you put in the work, if you put in the time to build your skills, and build that confidence, by the time you get to Everest, you're going to know that you deserve to be there. And that's one thing that we really encourage amongst our climbers is don't shortcut that process. The process is part of the joy of climbing. Like, yeah, it's great if you have the goal of climbing Everest and you just want to tick that box. That's great, but don't shortcut the process, because you're going to be shortcutting yourself. You're going to be, missing out on so many of these amazing experiences. So really going through the progression, starting on smaller peaks like Kosciuszko, Elbrus, Kilimanjaro, then climbing Denali's, Aconcagua, maybe an 8,000 meter peak. By the time you summit Manaslu, an 8,000 meter peak, and you've used the oxygen, your body does well at 8,000 meters, you've climbed with the Sherpa, you're going to have that confidence to tackle Everest. And I think that's so important. And, people are successful because they have that confidence on Everest. So
I love that you mentioned 0 to 100, because to my limited understanding, there is a little bit of controversy around, people that have money and are coming into this idea of, well, if I've got the money, then I can climb Everest, because obviously Everest isn't a cheap feat to approach. So I love that you sort of approaching that with progression, because to my understanding, there are other businesses out there that are sort of less interested in the journey for the client and more about making it a business and just sort of taking their money and, doing a half-assed job at getting them up there. Is that sort of what you've seen over the years?
Absolutely. And it's more so nowadays than it was a decade or two ago. I'm thinking about Everest in this example, but there are companies, more so the local companies, that will, they'll cash your check. If you want to sign up for Everest, they'll cash your check. It doesn't matter if you've never had crampons on before or not. And that's literally a situation that some of these people are in. They sell it like a Kilimanjaro climb. And these people that have never climbed anything before, they show up to Everest, and that's how you get into trouble. And obviously our reputation is based on safety and success. So we want to foster that progression to make sure that you build that experience and you're going to be successful on Everest. We don't want anyone showing up that, doesn't have a good chance of summiting. So working with people throughout the entire progression to from these smaller peaks to Everest is super important to us. And we want to make sure that everyone on our team is an asset, not a liability. They're going to help the team. They're going to be successful and safe on the mountain. So yes, people will cash your check, but we don't want to be that company. We want to make sure that you're safe and successful.
And what is your clientele like? Is it mostly people that have had a background in climbing? Or are there people that genuinely come to you as sort of new into this that are sort of, taking the time over the years to progress to higher and higher summits?
A little bit of both. I was just writing an email this morning to a lady from the UK who, she spent 30 years in mountain rescue, and she was an outdoor instructor when she was younger, but she started a company and her career kind of sidetracked her big climbing goals, but she still wants to summit Everest. And, she's been a climber her whole life, but hasn't had the time to kind of step away and go climb Everest. So for her, it's a lifestyle. We do get quite a few people that, are new to climbing. Maybe they hear about it by reading Into Thin Air or something like that, and they're intrigued by it. So they're newer to it. And for those people, it's really important to build that experience. There's no substitute for experience and getting your systems dialed so that they're second nature by the time you get on Everest. So for those people, we really want to work with them throughout the process to make sure they're ready, because it's not as much of a lifestyle. They don't have 30 years of experience before stepping on Everest. So
And talk to me about relationships, because I know that they're incredibly important to you, particularly when working in different countries around the world. Something that I really honor you for is that relationships with the local people is really important in terms of business, but just in terms of being, a foreigner in another country. What has been your experience with relationships, for example, with Sherpas? Because I think, when we speak about climbing, we can speak about a lot of things other than the foundation, which is the Sherpas. So why are they so important to you in not only your business, but also on a personal level in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true of all the different places that we climb. It's a really relationship business. So whether it's our partners in Argentina or Russia or wherever it may be, it's a people business, and those relationships are so important to running a successful business. The Sherpa in particular, they're so important to me because, like I mentioned earlier, for so many years, I was spending 4 months a year in Nepal with the Sherpa. So they became like family to me. And, I think I'm so taken by their culture. It's a bit of a utopia in a way. It's a simpler way of living. It's so nice for me to kind of step away from the rat race, when I was living in the States, and kind of slow down and just be part of a simpler way of life. And they're such sincere people, such hardworking people that, as I mentioned before, hopefully people can learn from my experiences in the mountain, but I learned from them as well. And I've learned so much from the Sherpa. And it's just been such a big part of what draws me back to the Himalayas. And I think as part of that, I'm more connected to the culture and the trip itself, and it makes me and our clientele want to give back to these cultures. And many years ago, I started the Tiger of the Snows Fund, and that's to fund education in places like Nepal for outdoor tourism workers who may not have as many opportunities as we have in Australia or the States or Europe, places like that. And, I think it's an important part of doing business, but it's part of what you feel obligated to do because these cultures give you so much. You can't just take, you need to give back to them as well. And we give employment and stuff like that, but to go a bit above and beyond, I think is super important. They appreciate that. And, we certainly appreciate them. They've changed my life, and I do consider them family. So, I think it's an important part of our business.
Yeah, it's so incredibly beautiful that you began the Tiger of the Snows Fund, because all I hear throughout your business is all about the journey, and it's all about contribution. And I just think that is so incredibly powerful. In terms of lessons, is there one profound lesson that you have learned from the Sherpa that you could share with us?
I think I think just the sincerity and work ethic inspires me. And, every year when I travel over there and I spend time with them on Everest and Choyu and Manaslu, that rubs off on me and kind of resets that I want that to be part of who I am. So I think simple things like that, like, being honest, having that sincerity, being welcoming, having a strong work ethic, I think is super important. You can't, like I touched on earlier, you can't expect someone to work hard and others not to. And with the Sherpas busting their butts every day, it kind of raises my level of work. I want to work just as hard to make sure the trip is a success as well. So there are a lot of little things about their culture that, find so, so beautiful that it makes me want to emulate them,
Yeah, I certainly think you are emulating in terms of work ethic. I recently saw that you've introduced executive domes into, I think, Everest Base Camp. I'd love to
Yeah.
speak to you more about the business side of things, because your work ethic really reflects in the momentum that you've created in your business. Obviously, with COVID, things have kind of slowed down naturally. But in terms of sort of moving forward, it seems like you're quite an innovator to some extent. Talk to me about introducing something like an executive dome and your intention behind that. And also, I assume you've probably met some sort of critics from more purists that think that this may not have a place in something like an expedition.
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do. We're young and hungry as a company. We've only been operational for 4 years. Obviously, I spent decades working for other companies, and I kind of saw what worked well, what didn't work. And I felt, especially on Everest, but a lot of these other places, the industry was stagnant. It hadn't really changed in a generation, but there was so much that could be improved upon. And that was really the reason we started this company, is because we felt that we could offer a better experience for a great price. And we wanted to give people those experiences. So, that was super important for us. And yeah, I think part of that innovation is customization, investing in logistics, infrastructure for our base camp. We spent a lot of money this past season on sustainability, a new solar array for base camp. We've got a big base camp dome with a cafe in there. And you mentioned the executive domes, and some people think these things are frivolous, but for us, we think it's all about creating a good experience for our climbers to be more successful on the mountain. And it really comes down to that success. We found that climbers that can fully rest at base camp, if you can walk into a big dome, hang out in the cafe, get a cappuccino and read a book, you're going to take your mind off the mountain. You're going to be comfortable. If you're eating good food, you're going to be well fed. You're going to keep your strength up. And even though some of these things might seem frivolous, they add to the success of our climbers. And that's our goal. Our job is to make climbers successful on peaks like Everest. And if we can do something more to improve that success, we're going to do that. So investing in infrastructure and stuff like that is super important to us. And yeah, people will be critical of that. They'll say, oh, you're turning Everest into a circus. But hey, we're just trying to offer our clients the best experience. If they don't want that experience, they can climb with someone else. If they want to sleep in a soggy, wet tent with another company, they can do that if they really want to suffer on Mount Everest. But we want our climbers to be comfortable, well rested, well fed, and they're more successful because of that. So that's kind of our MO and philosophy, and it's worked well for us. Our clients are happy, and we just want to offer the best experience we can. So
through adjusting in that and adapting and innovating, are you genuinely seeing like a metric of increase of success through establishing these things?
Absolutely. Yeah. The climbers are happier, they're stronger, they're healthier at base camp. We're not getting the colds coming through base camp as much. So I think just, all those little things add up. We talk about the marginal gains. If we can improve every aspect of our program just a little bit, it adds up to a much better overall experience and adds to that success. So, that marginal gains approach is really important to us, and it has improved our success rate. So
in relation to these adaptations and these innovations, and obviously through increasing success rate, that literally means more people are completing their expeditions. Is there an element of mindset that you help your clients with like potential self-doubt in doing something like this? Because obviously we can have these external motivators that help us succeed, but do you work with your clients in their mindset as well?
Honestly, we probably don't as much as we should. I make a point to check in with all of our climbers throughout the expedition. We do nightly briefings to check in with everyone, make sure everything's going smoothly. And I think, part of the most important thing for me is just reiterating to the climbers that you deserve to be here. You can summit this peak. There's no reason to be intimidated. You've done your homework. So I think for me, that's kind of been the biggest thing I've learned. Like, if you put in the work, then you deserve to be there and you can be successful. And that's really helped me. Actually, Dave Hahn, he's climbed Everest more than any non-Sherpa, 15 Everest summits. I remember my first time at the South Col going up to the summit of Everest. He came down from the summit that day and he said, "Mike, you've put in the work. You deserve to be here." And that was so powerful for me. And it made me realize, I do deserve to be here. I've climbed Choyu. I've done 20 Aconcagua expeditions. So building that confidence amongst our climbers is really important for me. But honestly, we probably don't work as much on the mindset part of it as we should, because it is so incredibly important. And, I always say that, like, climbing and guiding is really important, but being an amateur psychologist is just as important for these trips. Because if you understand your clients, their mindset, their motivations, you can really help them through this process and build that confidence. So, kind of understanding those motivations and helping them through tough times and tough patches can completely change one of these experiences. So, I think that's one of the things we have some definite room to improve on. But just understanding that clients have different motivations and stuff like that, I think is really important. So,
yeah, because as you shared with the journey, like the progressive way that you do things, you're not just sort of putting someone at the bottom of base camp and telling them to climb Everest. Yeah. They're having experiences which they obviously learn a lot. But I can only imagine with climbing something like Everest or some of like the higher altitude summits, there has to be moments in almost everyone's experience where they have deep reflection of themselves and their life, and stuff comes up. That's always been my experience in trekking or ultramarathon running or anything that's really challenging, is like you kind of have those pivotal moments where you really face yourself and where you are at in life, which can be a really beautiful, flourishing thing, but sometimes it can kind of be quite overwhelming for people too.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the power of the mountains. They're beautiful, powerful places, but also, if you put yourself out of your comfort zone and you move past that and you're successful, that's so empowering. And then you take that back to your job or your daily life, whatever it is. You start to understand what you can do, what you can accomplish. And then maybe you go home and you run a marathon or an ultramarathon or something like that. It's so eye-opening, and you wouldn't learn about yourself in the same way if you didn't have these experiences. And I think that's why it's so powerful to set these big goals and accomplish them, to face your fears and push yourself outside of your comfort zone is so important for people. And it's such a human thing to do. You're a better person for it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I love how you always speak about the power of the mountains. And I'd recommend to any of the listeners that have not experienced that and don't know what that means to really get that out there and experience that, because it's certainly one of the most beautiful and humbling experiences that I've ever felt. So, Mike,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I've loved this conversation. I love your passion and your sense of contribution. And I really honor you in all of that. And on a final note, I'd love to ask you, what does it mean to you, Mike, to be human?
To be human, it means a lot of different things. A few of the things that jump to mind would be to be fallible. I think in this day and age where, especially with social media, everyone puts their best self out there, and it seems like, oh, everyone's perfect and having these they lead these amazing lives, and no one thinks that they can fail or they need to be perfect. And I think just being human, being fallible, and knowing that you can not summit a peak and then come back and summit it in the future and learn from that experience, I think is super important. But beyond the mountains, just in your daily life as well, don't be afraid to fail. Put yourself out there, and if you fail, no big deal. Pick yourself up and learn from it, and move on. I think that a lot of the peaks that I've failed on, quote unquote failed, I've learned the most from about myself and about the mountains. And to not be afraid of that is something that I've had to learn, but it's been so important for me. And then I think, another piece of that is just getting out there and experiencing life. Like we were just talking about, the mountains are so powerful, and to miss that, to never experience that would be a tragedy. But it's not just mountain climbing. It's, planning a vacation to some exotic location and putting yourself out of your comfort zone that way. Just getting out there and experiencing life, logging off, getting out from behind the computer and seeing what's out there. I've learned so much, as I mentioned, from the Sherpa, from the local porters on Kilimanjaro, whatever it is. That's life to me, having these experiences. And I encourage anyone to do that. Get out of the mundane routine and set yourself some big goals and see where it leads. And if you fail, no big deal. It's all about the process. It's a learning experience, and you'll come away richer from that than you would had you never stuck your neck out there. So